Keel's on the phone. He's like, "You're not gonna believe this." I'm like, "What?" He's like, "I know where the Bullitt Mustang is." I said, "Wait, what?" The car that imprinted on me was the Ferrari F355. I was a car and driver when that car had come out, and I was like an intern, and I got to go along on one of their comparison tests with it, and the sounds it made, how planted it was, you know, the gated shifter. That is like one of the best mid-engine Ferrari designs ever. It's a gorgeous car. So I always loved those things, but I'd been scared off buying them because, you know, they cracked the headers. I think at the time, there was a lot of valve guide problems and they didn't have a supply of them. So there was one locally for sale and I was gonna buy it, and somebody who was really knowledgeable, so he's like, "I know somebody's got 8 engines sitting in his shop waiting for parts." I was like, "Oh, okay, that's a little over my head. I think I will do that." So then later when the F430s became cheaper, I thought, well, you know, they don't have the belts, they have chains, right? They fixed a lot of the issues. I never was a big fan of the 360s, so I thought, you know, buy a 430 stick. And I found one in the color I like. It's this blue one. Had a dirty Carfax, which the Ferrari people hate, but I love because it makes it cheaper. And I know what I'm going to do with the car. I'm going to drive it like crazy. So that's okay with me. And it was in Florida. Stick, my favorite color, TDF blue. It's like, awesome. Dirty Carfax, I don't care. You know, I knew what it was. It was just they scraped the bumper. I made arrangements to fly down to pick it up. And I think it was like 2 days before Hurricane Irma hit. But nothing was stopping me from going to get this thing. And I had been thinking about it for 6 months to go pick it up and drive it all the way through the spine of the Appalachians till I get home to Ann Arbor. I mean, that's the dream. And I get down there and, I mean, Florida was empty. And at the time, I loved these like unscheduled road trips where I just get in a car, I don't know where I'm gonna end up. I look on a map where I see the curvy roads, and when I get tired, I'll stop and find a place. So I head north, and you know, as I get past Georgia and it's getting dark, I'm like, well, I'm gonna stop and get, you know, stay for the night. Everything's booked. All the Florida people have left, and they were in all the motels everywhere they're going. So I think I ended up in Mountain City, Georgia. Maybe that's not the right term, but somewhere south of Asheville, somewhere in there was this really crummy, the worst motel I could find. You know, the carpet's stained. I mean, this is a place like maybe you don't want to sleep in the bed, but the one thing that I've found as a writer that I just totally love, if I have a really good story to tell and I can combine it with a road trip, there is nothing better. I can drive, have all my fun driving, and then I wake up early and I've got 2 to 3 hours trying to craft a story. And when you're in the sort of what I call like nonfiction storytelling business like we are, it's really not about, I mean, it depends on the writer, but for me, it's not about like crafting a sentence as much as it is you've found this great story, you've assembled all the information, you're just trying to organize it and present it in a way that someone else can enjoy this story. And at the time, I had like one of the best stories I've ever had in my 30-year career. And it was the Bullitt Mustang. I knew where it was, and I'd gone to see it, and we had photos of it. If you remember that, the Bullitt Mustang, there was 2 of them. They were kind of missing. There had been reports that one was somewhere in Tennessee, but nobody knew where it was. There was rumors that Steve McQueen tried to buy this thing and was rebuffed. There was rumors that the producers for the Charlie's Angels movie tried to buy this thing and were rebuffed. And the owner was really reclusive and secretive. What had happened is he had passed away and had left it to his son. His son was Robert Kiernan, really neat guy, and he's a paint salesman for LKQ. He had decided that he had a project that he wanted to use the car for. And so he called in Kevin Marty, who you probably know Kevin more than I do, but Kevin Marty has this really fascinating expertise in that he's got the Marty report, so you give him some information on your car, he can tell you what it was built in, but he's also amassed a real expertise of figuring out when a car is fake and real. So they invited Kevin Marty to see the car to make sure it was legit. And as Kevin Marty was viewing the car, he said, "Hey, you know what? You got to get this thing insured." And so he said, "Call McKeel Haggerty. It's my boss." So one day the phone rings, and McKeel's on the phone. He's like, "You're not going to believe this." I'm like, "What?" He's like, "I know where the Bullitt Mustang is." I said, "Wait, what?" where is it? He's like, what are we gonna do with this thing? I'm like, oh my god, oh my god. Can I go see it? Can I tell the story? What the owner was, Robert's a really neat guy, and he had also agreed to have this car be part of the Historic Vehicle Association National Register of Significant Vehicles. And this was a thing started by Mark Gessler and McKeel, and the idea was that they pick a car or two a year and they do this complete dossier on it. And then it goes into the Library of Congress. Gessler had figured out a way to get in there. And then this car and its story is really preserved for generations. And then what they also do is they take the car and they have this glass encasement and they put it on the mall in Washington, D.C. So people, it's kind of a way to preserve our automotive cultural heritage. And so that was going to be part of it too. So I'm working with those guys and I want to tell the story. They wanted it to coincide with the next Bullitt Mustang that was coming out. And so it's kind of funny how these things work, was that, people start to know, word starts to get out, and as we're trying to figure out how we're going to tell the story, the second Bullitt Mustang pops up. Sean is the son, Sean Kiernan. His dad had wanted to keep the car secret. So when Sean saw that other car came out, he initially thought, oh my gosh, I've betrayed my father, who he thought very highly of, loved very deeply. And so he wanted to do right by his dad, right by his car, right by his family, all that stuff. And when we found out the second car was a car that had been wrecked, and it wasn't quite clear how much of the original had been retained. I think we know now more, but back in the day we didn't. But Sean's car was, according to Kevin Marty, was pretty close to as it came off the movie set. And so what that meant was I had scheduled to come down and see him and get the story and also photograph the car. He was getting nervous about that. He didn't want people knowing about it. So it kept getting delayed. We were going to go in May. We were going to go in June or whatever. So finally, it's September, and I fly to Nashville with a photographer. Wouldn't even let it out of his garage. And I drive down this country road to his house, and it's up this steep driveway, and at the top of this hill there's this sort of, it's a ranch house you might see anywhere. And I walk up the hill, and the garage door is open, and there's the back end of the Bullitt Mustang. I mean, the thing that immediately popped into my head was like, wow, this is like any suburban neighborhood. Like, you're out walking your dog, there's Bob's Mustang. Maybe one day I'll get that thing fixed, but in the meantime, it's just a bunch of boxes on it. But it's the Bullitt Mustang. It's such an incredible story because the way it was one day, the year before, Sean was riding in the car with his boss, Casey Wallace. They work for LKQ, it's a paint supplier, and Casey is Sean's boss. And they spent a lot of time in the car together. And this one day, it had been about, I want to say 6 months to a year since Sean's dad had passed, so he's still grieving for that for sure. And this car was really important to his dad, so now it's really important to Sean. Casey's into sports, Sean's into cars, and they're trying to find common ground, something to talk about. Casey's like, I've met him, he's a really gregarious guy, really great talker. At some point, Casey says, what kind of cars you have? And Sean says, well, I got a 68 Mustang. And Casey says, what color? He says, well, it's green. And he says, what else? He's like, well, it's GT390. And this Casey doesn't know a lot about cars, goes, sounds a lot like the Bullitt Mustang. And Sean gets this panic, like he's revealed something he shouldn't have. I think he said the story was it was raining at the time, and they're sitting in the car together, and at this point, he's trying to figure out what to do. Does he tell his boss he's got the Bullitt Mustang? And at some point, he says, I have the Bullitt Mustang. And Casey doesn't know what to think. He's like, what are you talking about? You got the Bullitt Mustang. He's like, I have the Bullitt Mustang. The backstory was Casey and his buddy Ken were developing a screenplay. Ken Horstman is a movie maker, and they had written a screenplay. It's sort of like, the best thing I think, it's some mashup of Smokey and the Bandit, where somebody has the Bullitt Mustang and they're trying to sell it, but it gets stolen, and it's this whole caper thing that they're trying to pursue. So that's why Casey has Bullitt Mustang on the brain. And so now it turns out somebody works with owns the freaking thing. So now the three of them are in this project. They're going to make a movie. And now that they have the real one, they think they may have some leverage that'll get a studio involved, or I'm not really sure of the particulars, but something along those lines. So now it's total kismet, right? This is fate. This is way bigger than just own a car. This is now. So that started the whole project to get the car back together. Before Sean's dad had passed, they had decided to do a mechanical restoration to get it running again. So they had taken it apart, so the car was kind of in pieces. So now Sean has to put it back together. And luckily he did, and it was a very sympathetic kind of restoration. So that was sort of in the whole mix of trying to get this story out and why they were protective of it. They wanted to maybe use it somehow to their advantage. So I went in early September. I went to see the car, and then I had all my notes. I had the photos, and it was about a month later that I went to pick up the Ferrari. And I knew I had that story to tell. I had all my material. I get the whole story of it. Like, his dad had bought it from the second owner who bought it from the movie studio. They shipped it to Madison, New Jersey. His mom drove it back and forth to take him to school. She remarked the clutch was really heavy, and boy, it drinks gas. His dad worked for, I think, the Hartford Insurance Company, got transferred to Cincinnati. The Bullitt came with him, went into a barn. And everybody kind of knew it, but Rob just liked the car and he didn't want people knowing it. And there on the wall in the house is a letter from Steve McQueen, 1978, Solar Productions letterhead. And by the way, you can see all this on the Haggerty.com website, wrote the story. Steve McQueen says, hey, I want to ask you one last time. I want to buy the car. It's like, I'll find you another Mustang. But of course, at the end, he says, this sounds great if there aren't too many monies involved in it. Otherwise, let's forget it. So think about it. Steve McQueen, he's a little dim star, but still a huge star. I mean, you remember Steve McQueen? Everybody idolized him, women and men. And he drove the Bullitt. I mean, the movie, was one of the best movie chases ever. And there's Rob Kiernan, does not swayed. And Sean, his son, totally respected his dad for that. He said, my dad told Steve McQueen to stuff it. He was badass. And so that was part of the story. They had the car. So I had all that, and then the story of the car itself. So now I'm back in this crummy motel. When you have a story like that to try and assemble, so you sit down and you take a couple hours. If you do your job right as a reporter, you have a notebook full of notes, you have recordings, and you're just trying to make sense of it, put it into a narrative that you think people will read. And so I got, a couple hours to write that. It was super fun. And get back at my brand new Ferrari, drive up these mountain roads, spend another night somewhere, get down, write the story. And I think I was in like Knoxville, where I finally had a draft that I thought was ready to share. You never know. When you put something together, is it any good? And you really feel vulnerable when you send this thing out to some people that you trust to say, okay, what'd you think? And that's what I did to a few people. I probably had spent maybe 10 or 12 hours total just putting this stuff together. And then I got these things back and said, oh, wow, what an incredible story. I finished the road trip, so we had this story, and we wanted to keep it until the Detroit Auto Show the following year, because the Bullitt Mustang was going to be there at the Detroit show with the new one and the real one. And at the time, we'd relaunched Haggerty Media. We had a new big magazine. We wanted to use it also to say, like, hey, look, we got this great big story. We're legit. We're players. So we had to keep this whole thing secret. And our plan was we were going to be at the show handing out magazines with the Bullitt on the cover. We thought it would be the biggest story of the show, and we wanted to be in the middle of it. We thought, okay, what a great way to establish it. But now another scare occurred, because in the car magazine business, there's something called an embargo, where you get early information with the agreement. You're not going to release this information early, but you get the stuff so that you can craft something good, not something just off the cuff. And it was a couple of years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, I was at Road and Track, and we got an early look at the 7th generation Corvette. And just by the way that the printing schedule worked out back then, I knew, based on the other car magazines, we were going to be the first on the newsstands with the new Corvette. And back then, newsstands were a big chunk of revenue. You'd sell 150,000, 200,000 copies when you had a good topic, and I knew the new Corvette would be. And so I was like, new to the job, right? I got bosses to please. This is going to make them feel good about giving me the job. And we had this fantastic image of the 7th generation Corvette, and we're going to put it on the cover. And I don't think anything of it, because I know when it hits newsstands, it's just past the embargo, so I'm totally safe. And 2 weeks before the newsstand, I got a call from Chevy PR. What? I thought we had an agreement. I'm like, what are you talking about? And like, did you see the Jalopnik story? I'm like, no. There on Jalopnik's story, this is the 7th generation Corvette. Boom. Picture of the cover of Road and Track. Somebody in the printing press had taken a photo of the cover, sent it to Jalopnik. I think at one point I actually talked to Mark Royce, who chewed my ear out. because I had blown their whole plans for it too. Unwittingly, of course, but at the end of the day, we're still responsible. So now I'm totally freaking out about the Bullitt Mustang doing the same thing. But I want it on the cover. I want to establish our legitimacy as an automotive media entity. So it was like, I don't know, 5 weeks of just biting nails. And now we had the next problem. We had, I think, 5,000 copies of the magazine, and it's at the printing. We had them delivered to our office. You ever know what 5,000 magazines are? I mean, it's like half a trailer truckload. And to get them from there to the auto show, you have to deliver them to a warehouse. We told the printing press if anything gets out, we were going to lose our minds. We were going to, there's going to be consequences. I didn't know what, but I was threatening. And so we get the magazines to the office, and now we have to figure out, we caravan as many pickups as we could find. And we take them from around our office to the loading dock at some warehouse outside of Detroit. And on a pallets, we leave these boxes of magazines and just cross our fingers. Then they all got delivered to Ford's stand, and luckily it all worked out. Nobody got it early, and there was all the great surprise, and it was a great story. And I think it was one of those things where it just felt really good to be in that business and to have a story to tell that's really compelling and to be the first with it. So when you get things like that, it's like all the struggles, everything like that is totally worth it.
Have you ever gotten an automated speeding ticket either from a fixed position camera or a school zone? In the US, that's less common than it is in Europe, and most of the time when you get the notification, they'll tell you that it's just about the payment, that they're not going to report anything. As long as you pay your speeding ticket, you won't have any points on your license or any additional risks. But did you know that those are some of the easiest tickets of all to fight and beat, especially with a partner like the Ticket Clinic? In Florida so far, they are 500-0. They've never lost fighting one of these tickets. So not only can they get them totally thrown out, but they can save you a ton of money. So check them out now at the link in the description below. You can actually just take a picture of your ticket, no matter when it comes in the mail or how you're issued a ticket, and text that picture to 305-305, and that'll get them on the case immediately. They'll let you know exactly what the proper course of action is and what their strategies are for every local municipality or jurisdiction to get your ticket dealt with. And of course, for regular tickets, for speeding tickets and things like that, the Ticket Clinic is your perfect partner to fight every one. They'll help you avoid costly fines, risk of license suspension, points on your license, jail time, higher insurance premiums, all the bad things that come with getting a bad ticket. The Ticket Clinic can help. They've got a nationwide network of attorneys that can help you find the perfect local partner that knows your area, knows your county, knows everything about it, and can help you fight your ticket and achieve the best possible outcome. So check them out now at the link in the description below to thank them for their support of VINwiki and fight your ticket with the Ticket Clinic.